Let's do it.
Hello, hello. My name is Clark Heron, aka the Harry Hobo, and welcome to AKA Sports Fletch. Thanks once again for joining us. And if you have heard us before, simply go to anchor.fm/aka sports or go to facebook.com/aka sports FB. Fletch, we've had some news kind of pop up here and there, so we've got quite a bit to talk about, at least for the NFL. But before we get to that, I know we talked just a little bit about this topic before we started. Over in France, there's a new Tonya Harding or potential Tonya Harding incident. And for those who don't know who that is, which might be quite a few people, Tonya Harding was a famous figure skater who hired a couple people to harm a competitor because she wasn't as good as her competitor. So over in France, we have a very similar thing, but instead of a competitor, there was a soccer player over there that hired two individuals to harm her teammate because she wanted her spot on the team. Uh, According to reports, there were two guys that drug the player out of the car and started beating her legs with lead pipes, which doesn't sound great. Luckily for her, and thankfully, she was able to get away with very
Shit.
minor bruises and cuts, so she'll be fine moving forward, but it is still under investigation. Uh, Crazy, number one, but it's like, is how much,
Nuts.
yeah, how much money has to be involved in order for you to reach out to two shady individuals to harm one of your own teammates?
Yeah, that's a bit much, man. That's she wanted that spot bad. That's crazy. That's crazy. I hope they figure it all out. She don't need to play soccer no more. What country is this?
This is over in France.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard crazy soccer stories, man. That's a new one though, but yeah, I hope the victim is all right. But that's nuts.
Yeah, there still seems to be a lot to be unfolded. The person alleged in this incident was detained by police along with one other person that was not named. They were released today, at least as of the article was written at
Oh, they snitched.
2:12. So I don't know exactly what we'll see from this, but we'll keep an eye on it just because, like you said, it's not something that you hear from day to day, and luckily it doesn't happen as often. But luckily, the victim in the situation was not harmed too badly. They should be able to play the rest of the year, but we will keep an eye on it moving forward. Just a quick note, a much easier topic to talk about. College basketball started this past week. A lot of different games started. I know that two big televised games with the Champion Classic on Tuesday, back when the college football playoff rankings were released. You had Kansas handling Michigan State, and then you had Kentucky losing by 9 to Duke. I definitely watched the second game of that Champions Classic, and Duke's got some very talented players, but very early on in the season, a lot of other games did play as well. We'll keep a close eye on college basketball, much like we keep an eye on NBA as well. But it is always nice to see college basketball start. Um, Moving forward, Fletch, tell us what is going on in the NBA right now.
Yeah, man. NBA is really shaping up right now. Kind of some news though. We'll kind of pump the brakes a little bit here. I don't know if I'm sure everybody's seen it by now. The whole Nikola Jokic and the Morris twins. That's entertaining, man. The NBA passed out. I believe it was a 1 game suspension for Joker. I believe Morris got fined. I want to say 500,000, and then Jimmy Butler actually got fined 300,000 for his part kind of inciting the riot, if you will.
300,000?
I believe so. I believe that is the
Wow.
number. It wasn't big number. Yeah, it wasn't big stamps on those. Yeah, got to fact check me if you need to, but those were some big stamps I saw. I'm like, it's quite of a bit here. But yeah, that was funny. That was funny, I must say. Um, so, anyways, moving on. In other news, the surprise team right now, Clark, the Washington Wizards. That Laker trade has definitely helped them out. And at this point in the schedule, just kind of where we are, teams are really like starting to look like themselves. For instance, you have them. The Bulls are starting to pick up speed. The Nets still look good. The Sixers do. The Heat as well. Cleveland actually is pretty surprising right now. Some other teams that we kind of talked about them before the season, Clark, if you remember, and we got a couple of those teams that are struggling early, and that's one, the Atlanta Hawks, and then also the Boston Celtics. Those are two teams that we mentioned, I think, in the summer about possibly, struggling out the gate, especially with a lot of the moves that happened after free agency. So that's really something to keep our eyes out on. Those are two teams that should be in the playoffs talent wise, but the East has definitely gotten a lot better. Um, Moving on to the West, it's kind of business as usual. Golden State's really showing that they're honestly right now the best team not only in the West but the league. Um, your usual suspects, the Clippers, the Mavericks, Utah, Suns, Nuggets, all looking pretty good. And, a couple teams waiting on some guys to get back, like the Clippers. Once they get Kawhi back, they'll take another step. Paul George is having a great season. The Lakers are looking okay, 7-5. They just beat the Heat last night. Just waiting for LeBron to get back. We'll see how that works with Russ. And outside of that, again, another team that we mentioned that very well may struggle coming into the season is the Blazers. They're sitting at 10th, 5-7. Dame is honestly starting off his worst number since his rookie year. So again, Clark, just some things to look out for. We kind of mentioned these things because a lot of teams did get better, and now you're starting to see that. For instance, the Grizzlies look much better and more fluent with Valanciunas than they did with Steven Adams. So that's just something to keep our eye on, or I'm sorry, vice versa. It's working out a little bit better. I'm sorry about that, but yeah, man, it's kind of all for the NBA right now. Nothing going on too crazy. Clark, I do need to ask, what are you making out of the Warriors so far this year?
They're just getting back to what they were doing in years past. The talent's always been there. They just had to really kind of put it together, add a few players in there. Gary Payton II is looking
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. I saw some postings on Facebook about his father asking where that athleticism came from. Because he didn't even know. He was concerned that maybe Karl Malone came around one of the days back in the day. Uh, but yeah, his son looks really, really good. Luckily for him, he's on the Warriors, a team that can help him really show off his stats or show off his abilities here in the NBA comparatively to if he was, drafted by. I hate to pick on him again, but Detroit obviously is the easy choice to go to. But
Yep.
yeah, the team looks great. Steph Curry looks awesome. They don't have Clay back yet, right?
Yeah, that's where we're waiting on. That's what's kind of scary with this team. They do have the best record in the league. And just throwing some numbers out here really quick. They're averaging the most points in the league at essentially 116, 115.9. They're second in steals. They're first in assists. They're second in rebounding. There's literally no category that they're outside the top 10 in, and a lot of the key ones, they're in the top 3 to 5, basically. I mean, they take the second most threes in the league, and yet they're still shooting 37%, which is fourth in the league. That's to say a lot. And a lot of these young guys, Jordan Poole, Damian Lee, Tuscan Anderson, and you have Iguodala back in the picture, like you mentioned, Gary Payton, and then just wait till you get Clay back, and it's going to look like it just like it did. They just have new pieces now, and also too, Clark, they're missing James Wiseman.
Yes.
It is scary. It is scary. So honestly, I think that might be the team to beat. Just looking at how they're playing so far this year, Brooklyn will be there. We'll see what Kyrie does. The Lakers, I think, will bounce back, but we'll keep our eye out on this moving forward and kind of just see what happens next.
Yeah, absolutely will. And this past weekend, we actually had some fights. Fletch, you want to talk about some of those fights?
Yeah, we had a couple. We had a couple good ones. Three good ones, really. Actually a few more than that. I don't know. The undercards were pretty good too. But we'll talk about the key ones. We'll start with the UFC. I love the way they opened the card. I don't know if you got to catch this, but they opened the card with Gaethje and Chandler, and that was probably the fight of the night. That kicked it off. Didn't even realize this before the fight. I don't know if I mentioned it, but they were at Madison Square Garden. You kick off the big card at 10 o'clock with this fight, and it went all the way down. It's a unanimous decision for Justin Gaethje. It got to the point where I think it was a little too much. his chin was too strong, and essentially whoever could take the most punches was going to win in this one. And yeah, Chandler kind of ran out of steam. He's bleeding pretty much throughout the second and third round. So outside of that, we had a couple good fights leading up to the two title fights. You had Thug Rose versus Zhang Weili. That was a very good fight. Actually, a split decision. The rematch from the last time when she knocked her out. So she's beaten her twice now, but this one being a split decision, Clark, leaves a little bit of controversy. So we'll see what's next for Thug Rose. And kind of go from there with her. She was the underdog actually coming into this fight. So, if you're betting, man, you may have hit big on this one. Um, and then the one we all wanted to see, man, it was Kamaru Usman versus Kobe Covington, the rematch. Last time it went 5 rounds with actually a TKO due to Covington's jaw being broken. Came back in this one, went 5 rounds as well. At one point, second round, I believe, Usman did get a couple knockdowns on him. Not or I can't call them knockouts necessarily because they're not really knocked out. Clark in the UFC, it really doesn't matter, but he definitely sent them down. And then after that, he actually Kobe Covington kind of held his own. Held his own. I think they gave him one of the last three rounds, and then lost 49-46 on all cards. So it was a fun fight, and I don't think the timing of this was impeccable because you were able to watch the boxing match between the two title fights for the UFC. So before we move on to UFC, we'll move on to the boxing match here, Clark. Anything about the UFC? Did you end up catching the fight?
I did not. Unfortunately, I had some other priorities that I had to get done, so I was not able to catch any of the fights.
All good, all good. So the way this was almost set up, and I had kind of had two screens going here. After the first fight, title fight, Canelo Alvarez and Caleb Plant, basically they started essentially as soon as that fight ended. I was able to watch this whole fight and then turn on the Usman fight, and I was literally a minute late into the first round, so it was really nice. However, this fight was set up to be a nice one. Two guys that really didn't seem to like each other, but one thing that we found out is they definitely respected each other. There's actually a video that went around Clark on Twitter, and they had a whole conversation in the ninth round, and it was literally I can't even call it trash talk. It was respectful, but it was pretty cool. If you want to check that out, I'll send you the link. Everybody online, it's easy to find. Nonetheless, it was a very close fight. Until Canelo really, showed that championship grit. Through the first like 8 rounds, most had it scored, either 3-5 or 4-4. And then you kind of got to those late rounds, the ninth, the 10th, and then the 11th there. Canelo really tried to, turn up some steam. He took over and led the boxing match in punches after that. And you really saw him start to wear Caleb Plant down, especially in the 10th. And it came out very strong in the 11th with two knockdowns to put it to end it. Um, we mentioned it last week, Clark. There was some whispers about Alvarez versus Usman. They both needed to win. I don't know if we'll get to that yet, but that's just something to look for.
Yeah, and we'll definitely keep an eye out for that. Thank you very much for letting everybody know about those fights. Um, we did have some breaking news just today, just in the NFL. First, we'll start with Cam Newton going back to his old stomping grounds. He re signed with the Panthers to be potentially their starting quarterback since Sam Darnold found out that he has a broken bone in his shoulder. He'll be out at least 4 to 6 weeks. Fletch, I like Cam Newton, but over the years, ever since he kind of got hurt with his shoulder, he hasn't really looked right. Is this a good?
Right.
I mean, it's a good signing for depth piece, but is is he gonna lead these Panthers to potentially a playoff berth?
Um, that remains to be seen. The NFC is very tough this year. But just speaking on the NFL right now, or speaking on the Panthers right now, I should say, and where they kind of stand, we kind of know what this team is. It's a pretty good, I shouldn't say pretty good, that's disrespectful. It's a really good defense, a very good secondary. They can hold teams to points if they don't have to be on the field all game. Right now, their record stands at 4-5. They're only one game out of the wild card spot. I don't know if he can lead them there because I do think some teams behind them may be gaining some steam, like Seattle. Maybe even Minnesota has lost every game this year by only a score. Um, I like the pickup though. I do because he fits still. And I think you have a coach. It's a different coach this time, but I think you have a coach that can adapt to Cam's playing style. But then he's very familiar with the pieces. He's played with these guys. So I think that helps a lot. Familiarity, and then he doesn't have to throw it. They don't really have a deep threat. Maybe Robbie Anderson, but he has like 20 catches on the season. He's been irrelevant. So if you can get DJ Moore and Terrence Marshall and CMC the ball and throw in some Hubbard as well. And Cam can hit those pieces because they're not more than 20 yards down the field. So I think it's a good signing. I do think it's a stopgap though. Unless they run off maybe 4 of the next 6 games and win those, I think Cam would then keep the job until the end of the season. But I think Darnold will be the starter coming back.
Agreed, and it really is going to come down to if CMC can stay healthy the rest of the way. That's going to be the big
Exactly.
piece to keep this offense going. We've seen what it's like without him. Chuba Hubbard's been a decent fill-in, um, but they definitely need Run CMC to come back as well as a quarterback that can get him the ball on a much more consistent basis. So we'll see what Cam can do, what's left in the tank for him. Other big news that came out today was OBJ. Odell Beckham Jr. has cleared waivers earlier this week. There was a lot of reports about him potentially wanting to go to Green Bay. New Orleans was also interested, as well as New England. The Patriots was also pushing hard to get him. But lo and behold, he joins the team, the Los Angeles Rams, a team that is loaded with receivers. So why not add one more to this list? uh, an already a potent offense that could potentially get that much better. Uh, does this really make this team that much better, or does it really just solidify what a position that was already really good?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. What I believe, this is my take on it. I believe this that we already considered them probably a top 5 team in the league. We already considered them possibly the NFL, the NFC, potential winners. So there's not much room to go up. If alluding to what you're saying there, Clark. Where I would rank them with OBJ is still where I would rank them without OBJ. But I do think they did get a little bit better. It's hard to get better at a position that you're already top 5 in. You moved up, to me to number 1 or 2, but I don't think there was much of a difference between a lot of the top receiving cores in the league. So I do like the addition though, man. If you remember, I think Brandon Cooks with these two, Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, all had 1,000 yards with Jared Goff one year.
It's true. Yeah, that offense was really, really good. I'm just kind of going through the listing right now of all the different receivers. We talked a little bit off here, so let's go ahead and bring it up here
Let's
with all
do it.
these receivers. Uh, I'm just going through the list and seeing where I would rank Odo Beckham when it comes to fantasy terms. Um, just going through the season stats right now in full point PPR. Obviously, he's nowhere near his prime, so I'm not going to put him anywhere near the top. He still has some ability. He's a good route runner. We saw what he did with Cleveland. Even when he wasn't targeted, he was still getting wide open. He was just not getting targeted all that well with good throws. This one's tough. I think he's probably somewhere in the realm of like a man. I don't know, maybe an Adam Thielen type range. Maybe somewhere in front of Mike Williams. I've never really truly believed with Mike Williams. He's been great early on, but I know he's kind of more of a boomy busty type player. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Maybe in the same realm as like a Brandon Cooks that will be a very consistent target. It kind of reminds me of this move might become like the Anquan Bolden of this team where he's going to be the possession guy. He's going to be the one that can help move the chains where Robert Woods could potentially be more of a downfield threat or the running receiver and then Cooper Cup just let Cooper Cup being doing his thing. That's kind of where I've got him now. It wouldn't surprise me if he moved up a little bit, depending on what he does with or Matthew Stafford, because when Stafford came over, Robert Woods took a little bit of time to finally get going, whereas Cooper Kupp kind of shot off like a cannon. Uh,
Right.
where do you have him ranked, and do you feel like he's going to be more towards the Cooper Kupp side and get an instant connection right away, or is it going to take a little bit?
Um, I personally, and I look at it like this: it's still Sean McVay. I think you upgraded at quarterback. I ain't gonna say you think we upgraded at quarterback. Um, I think this does have Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods take a small hit. I don't think they're going to slow down. I would slide Odell probably very close to Robert Woods. So I like where you have him, and this is just me going off of the ESPN PPR wide receiver rankings. You mentioned Mike Williams, you mentioned Adam Thielen. That's about the 19 through 25 ish range, with guys like Lockett, Cooper, Thielen, Hopkins are on this list. I would venture to put him probably anywhere between 15 and 20 right now, with a ceiling of probably about 14 to 15, maybe 13 to 14. The threat is really the touchdowns. If he can get the ball in space on slants, outs, um, you know, even screens, and get in space, that's a threat for a touchdown every time with Odell, because he's a great route runner, but he's also very good with the ball. So I'm curious to see what they do with him, and McVay is going to really like. I think he's going to work him in. I do think this. You probably need to wait 2 weeks to start him. See what they do with him first before just starting him out the gate, unless you don't have any other options.
Yeah, you're definitely going to see what's going on. It also reminds me of when the Buccaneers signed Antonio Brown, bringing in a very talented receiver with an already crowded receiver room uh, in that offense, but he's destroyed people. He's done really, really well
And
in
it's
Tampa
worked.
Bay. Yes, it has worked. So I would imagine if they can continue to run a very pass-happy offense, which first Matthew
Mm-hmm.
Stafford is totally fine by him. I know they've had some really good production out of Darrell Henderson this year. A little bit of a surprise there. Um, but yeah, it will be very interesting to see how he pans out, especially for fantasy purposes. Now that we've got 5 games left in the regular season, and we've got playoffs coming up, so this is crucial time for especially my teams that aren't having the best of luck this year. Uh, we definitely
Yeah.
need the wins, and this week, surprisingly enough, you and I actually play this week in our fantasy football league of record. Um, First player is going to be playing tonight. I got Justin Tucker going. And the way things are going to go, your team is going to win, and they're going to win by a lot. But like I said, with only 5 games left, I need all of them in order to even have a chance at the playoffs. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to try and take a W this week. But the way the things are running right now, I have a feeling that your team's going to have a very, very good week.
Well, I mean, I'm hoping, but I'm kind of in the same space as you. I only have one more win than you. You're on a 3 game losing streak. I'm on a 2 game losing streak, and the weeks 7 through nine for me proved to be brutal, and I knew they would be, and they were definitely brutal. And now I don't know if you've noticed this. And this is why I'm probably gonna lose. My flex spot is terrible right now. I'm just gonna be completely honest to the people. My top 5 guys are really strong. 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and a tight end. But yeah, we're struggling there. So Clark, this might be some toilet bowl mess going on right now with us, but hopefully we can figure it out. And also, people at home, check your fantasy leagues, please. I just found out one of my leagues actually ends at the same time they ended last year. So actually, I only have 4 more weeks in a couple leagues. So just check them out. Some people did not extend these with the extra game this season, called those lazy commissioners. Um, I need a nickname for them, other than lazy commissioners. We'll think of something cool and throw it out next week, Clark, because that was irritating. I was like, I wish I would have known earlier. Everyone knew a game was added, and they rest the last game of the season. Not many teams are resting 2 of the games. So, and if they do, they were going to do it anyways with 17 weeks. Anyways, that's my rant. But yeah, we'll throw that out next week. Lazy commissioners, just wait on it. I got a nickname coming.
Yeah, we'll not only have our nickname going then, but we'll also know exactly who won in our matchup, and we'll keep the people informed on that.
Good
Um,
luck.
yeah, very good luck for you. I don't have high faith in my team, but I know what my team is like all year long. But we will see what happens. Before we move on to the college football talking about the playoff rankings this week, I want to wish everyone a happy Veterans Day. I wish every all the veterans out there thank you very much for your service. It has been truly a blessing that you guys have been able to go out and do what you do, guys and gals, to do what you do to keep all of us safe here at the home front. So for Fletch and I, we want to extend our thank you and happy Veterans Day to all out there. Um, so now that we've got
Yes.
that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about the college football playoff rankings that came out in between the Champions Classic basketball games this past Tuesday. You and I talked a little bit before, like over the weekend, and you had a couple teams very interesting. One such team, you had Texas A&M. You thought they might jump into the top 10 this week based on their nice win against Auburn this past week. They did not, but they were just on the
Yeah.
outside looking in, and I think they are the best two-loss team in the country right now. I think that is pretty undebatable at this point. Um, we will see what
Indeed.
happens. They obviously need some help, but they're going to have another ranked game coming up, and we'll get into that here in a little bit. Other big games this past weekend, there really wasn't any big games, but we did have a big upset. Uh, Going to West Lafayette, Michigan State losing to Purdue in pretty handily fashion that entire second half. Watching that game, yet I never got the sense that Michigan State ever had a chance of getting back in that game. Like that's how bad it was. So they're going to take a little bit of a tumble. Obviously, Wake Forest also lost. They gave up 58 points in that game to North Carolina. Uh, no defense was there, but uh, yeah, it was quite the scoring affair.
It's a basketball game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so they're going to fall out of it. They didn't fall as far, but really the biggest controversy heading into these rankings before I put them in there and before we talk about them was exactly what are you going to do with Michigan State? Obviously, with the first rankings, they talked about how much a head-to-head game matters. And we saw that with three different instances: Oregon ahead of Ohio State, we saw Oklahoma State ahead of Baylor, as well as Wisconsin, a three-loss Wisconsin ahead of a two-loss Iowa. So there had to be some kind of weight there to a head-to-head win, right?
There still is. I
There's
think that's the reason why Michigan is at 7. Um, I do believe that a loss to Purdue did hurt them enough, is what it was. And I think the committee found it. I'm pretty sure they argued about it. They did mention on TV that the discussion went close to an hour. So this was a hot debate. I personally had Michigan State eighth, behind an undefeated Oklahoma. Oklahoma has struggled, but Oklahoma has not lost. At the end of the day, the job is to win the game. I understand it's ugly, which is why Oklahoma is the lowest ranked undefeated team out of the Power Five. But Michigan State had a great win against Michigan, but Michigan didn't lose to an unranked Purdue or at this point a 19th ranked Purdue. Um, that's the reason why I think Michigan kind of got the nod here. So I actually agree with the committee. I doubled down on it actually, and I would put Michigan State personally at eighth, just because I know Oklahoma didn't play, but again they haven't lost, and then they lost to at the time an unranked opponent. If Oklahoma loses to an unranked opponent, they will fall probably close to, I don't know, Auburn and NC State at 16, 17. I guarantee they fall fairly far.
yeah, especially the way that they have played games so far. And before I uh, bring up that topic about Michigan State ranking. Let's just review those rankings. Georgia at number one, Alabama State at number two, Oregon, Ohio State both jumped up one spot apiece, along with Cincinnati. Michigan climbed up to number six. Michigan State dropped from 3 to 7. Oklahoma State pat at 8. Notre Dame and Oklahoma State jumped up one spot as well for the 8 and 9. And for those of you that did watch or listen to my playoff rankings prediction show on Tuesday, I got 8 out of 10 correct this past week, a much better week this way. Obviously, the only two that I missed was the Michigan State, based on the fact that Michigan State still holds the head to head. Now, here's the problem that I have with what the committee did. I'm fine if you want to rank them this way, but your reasoning for it was absolutely absurd. I'm just going to start there. And here's why. You obviously value the head to head. Makes sense. If Michigan State lost big time to a non ranked team, which they did, you could make an argument. But here's the problem. You set the precedent on the first rankings that the head to head matters, regardless if you have a bad loss or not. Right now, Oregon is still ahead of Ohio State for 2 straight weeks. Why? Well, they have the head to head win, even though Oregon, amongst those two teams, has the worst loss to Stanford. It wasn't as bad as Michigan State losing to Purdue, I'll grant you that, but it was still an unranked team, and I think Stanford is a 4-loss team at this point, maybe even a 5. Uh, that's really the problem that I have there, and it was really the committee's explanation is what I had problems with. They came out and said, well, in our previous rankings, this is talking about the first rankings of the year, they had a discussion about how Michigan was actually better than Michigan State for the first rankings, even though they just played head to head and Michigan State beat them. They said their reasoning for it was in all the metrics that they used, which, again, they're not going to tell us what metrics they used. They're going to tell us exactly what algorithm that they have, if they have any to be had. They say that Michigan is the better team, even though at this point, let's see, Tuesday was 12 days ago. Now it's 14 days ago. Michigan State beat Michigan. So this wasn't like early on in the season, like Ohio State losing to Oregon in week 2. That none of that. This is just a couple weeks ago. This is what they should have said. And maybe Fletch, you can tell me if I'm wrong. But this is what they should have said. We, as the committee, we built the rankings. We valued the head-to-head, which is exactly what you needed to do. We were not prepared for Michigan State being the only notable loss in the top 10 besides Wake Forest. And we did not give ourselves and build enough flexibility in our rankings to where if Michigan State loses, it gives us the ability to move a team like Oklahoma back or somebody else back to where we can punish Michigan State enough for the bad loss without punishing all the other teams that happen to win this week. I think
True.
that's exactly what happened. They came out with some other thing that makes no sense. Because if Michigan was truly the better team, even though they lost head to head, I don't know. To me, it sounds like they just didn't build enough flexibility in their rankings. Fletch, do you agree, disagree? Where are you at?
You make a great point, and one thing you're not wrong because it is a matter of opinion because we're not necessarily committee; it's just our thoughts. However, while the president was set last week with the head-to-head, and I don't know if you remember when I texted you, or it might have not. I don't know. I don't know if it was you or another guy. It was definitely somebody though. I texted this message out and said I love the college football playoff ranking because it has no bias and it has no or you don't know what's going to happen because it's a matter of what is the committee like 12 or 13 people.
13. Mm-hmm.
13. It's a matter of those 13 people's opinion. And I do like it that way because these are people that I believe, at least what's been told to us in transparency, and we don't know this for a fact, but we're just going to take their word for it until proven otherwise, is that they watch these games. So, personally, where I also think the committee messed up, and I don't maybe the rankings in general across the board messed up. I believe Michigan was originally ranked too high. I still personally think they are. the college football rankings that we give are based on what we predict is going to happen, but also somewhat of what we believe. We know Michigan being ranked six from last week or seven. I can't remember. I think it was seven
There
last
was
week.
7 last
We
week. Yeah.
know, yeah, yeah. You know they're going to stay relatively high. But then if you look at the AP poll, Oklahoma's in front of Michigan being undefeated. So Notre Dame is also in front of Michigan with one loss, because their loss is also to an even higher ranked team than Michigan State. So you can even mention that Michigan should have probably been ranked where they are in the AP poll, which this week is ninth. And I have no issue with that. I know for a fact the committee wasn't going to drop them below, what was it, six though. Oh, I knew the top 4 through 7 was going to slide up a spot because Michigan lost. I assumed Oklahoma would follow in that order, and that's why I doubled down on that. But I don't think you're wrong because the head-to-head is valued, and based on what you said, yes, Ohio State probably should be in front of Oregon. If we're going to base it on that. The poking a hole in that argument, though, Clark, is that Ohio State's winning streak really, and when they got hot, was against inferior opponents.
Right.
Not saying it wasn't for Oregon, but we don't know how. The last time they played a good opponent, they lost Ohio State. So that's the reason why I think the committee has Oregon in front of Ohio State. Um, and I think that's where yes, the head to head matters, and I think that's why Michigan State is still as high as seventh. Because I think Michigan one probably should have been further back personally for me, and then Michigan State because of the loss would also be, or because of the win wouldn't be that far in front of Michigan. Where yes, then you can drop them down, like you alluded to, the flexibility to where if Michigan State beats Michigan, say if they're ranked ninth, Michigan State then jumps up to say five, then can lose and stay at eight in front of Michigan and still at nine,
Right.
or say 12 because they lost. There's the flexibility, and they lost that by putting an undefeated Cincinnati as low as six last week. They lost that by putting an undefeated Oklahoma as low as eighth last week. Um, so that's what happened. Also, too, you have to, and also Wake Forest being undefeated, ranked at ninth, and they hadn't had any really good wins at all. But ice on the cake, though, Clark, it's been a chaotic season as well. So chaotic things are bound to happen.
Yeah, and just for the record, I definitely don't think Ohio State should be ranked ahead of Oregon because I appreciate what the committee did in the first rankings and this ranking as well, honoring the head to head. Yes, they won the head to head, even though Oregon did lose at this point, the head to head because they have similar records. And what we've seen with years past committees, uh, the more interesting one was when we saw initially Wisconsin ahead of Iowa, even though they had one extra loss. In years past, Wisconsin would not be ranked ahead of Iowa just because they have that third loss on their resume. You would have to wait until Iowa lost a third game and then Wisconsin would be ranked ahead. So it's a little bit of a tweak from what we've seen in years past, but you and I think, are on the exact same page. If they would have started Michigan much further back, because as of right now, the only ranked win on their resume in the first rankings was Wisconsin. They gave them that because Wisconsin was not good at the time. So they gave them a ranked win at that time. So
Wisconsin was
if
not ranked in the AP poll at the time.
right, yeah, exactly. So they weren't ranked at the time when they won that game. It was the game against Notre Dame was when Wisconsin was ranked, got destroyed in the second half of that game against Notre Dame. But exactly to your point and my point as well, if they would have started Michigan much further back, it would have given them the opportunity, if it presented itself, for Michigan State to fall back to penalize a team for a very bad loss without having to penalize a team like Oklahoma for sitting still, or penalize a team like Michigan. My worst case scenario was them penalizing Cincinnati further by pushing Cincinnati back to 7, just so Michigan State could be at 6 and Michigan could stay at 7, something like that. Or Michigan at, I don't know how it was. But obviously Cincinnati struggled a little bit this week as well. But I'm glad to see that they're at 5. Obviously, this past week I got 8 out of 10, and this was one of the easier weeks, unfortunately, because this next coming week, and let's talk about that schedule, it's going to get a little bit harder this week. Um, there is a lot of ranked games on the schedule, and a lot of them have to deal with a lot of the top teams. Um, Before we go here, I will say that just this week, Rocky Lombardi and company did get another win for Northern Illinois. They only had 264 yards passing, so a much smaller week for passing this week in the MAC. I always like to keep a track of those box scores because they can get out of hand very quickly. Uh, but
Indeed.
a little slower this week. As for matchups in college football on Saturday, we have Oklahoma at Baylor, which would have been a slightly bigger game had Baylor not lost. Oklahoma coming off a bye. This starts their three-game uh, the biggest part of their schedule left. They've got Baylor, then they go, I think, on the road to Iowa State, and then they have Bedlam against Oklahoma State to finish the season. So this is the first of three that
Yep.
obviously they have to win in order to stay in the conversation for New Year's Six Game Bowl, as well as one of the Final Four spots as well. So we'll keep an eye on that one. That is noon on Fox. Another big game at 3:30. Purdue, the Spoiler Makers is what they're being called. Go on the road to Columbus to face the Buckeyes of Ohio State. That is at 3:30. Purdue they extended their record. As for they have the most wins as an unranked team versus a top five opponent. They made it number 17 this past weekend, beating Michigan State, which is just insane to know that you've done that 17 times as an unranked opponent. But unfortunately for spoiler makers this week, they're actually ranked. They have jumped to number 19. We mentioned that a little bit earlier. So we'll see what happens now that they're a ranked team versus a top five team. And Columbus should be quite the game, especially with Aiden O'Connell passing the rock as well as they have. They just torched Michigan State. So that will be a very interesting game. And the last ranked game that we have against two ranked opponents is Texas A&M going on the road to Ole Miss, a team that we highlighted their game last week. Ole Miss, they played Liberty. We wanted to keep an eye on Malik Willis and see how well he did. Well, he played well, just not well enough. Uh,
Yeah, it was
he,
bad.
yeah, he ended up having three interceptions in that game, so probably not the best scouting day for him, but it's definitely some very valuable experience that he will take with him moving on to the rest of this season. But as for this game, Ole Miss at home, facing off against Texas A&M, like we mentioned, probably the best two-loss team left in their nation. It is a big game for them, and this one kind of helps Alabama both ways. If regardless of who wins, Alabama is going to be the victor of it because they have a close loss against Texas A&M, but they also have the win against Ole Miss. So I'm not sure which one helps better for them. Maybe just having the high end team just continue to climb up the board. I want to take a look at real quick the SEC because I know Georgia has the East locked up. They are definitely in the SEC championship game regardless of what happens. The rest of these games, I'm not sure. Okay, so Alabama has a one-game lead ahead of Texas A&M, Auburn, and Ole Miss as well for the rest of these games. Obviously, Auburn and Alabama play one another. I think if Texas A&M has Auburn beat Alabama, they will be in the SEC championship game against Georgia. So all they have
Yep.
to do is win out and have the Iron Bowl go to the Auburn Tigers. Might be a little bit of a large ask, but to be fair, Alabama did not play very well this past week against 4-win LSU. They had a total. Can you tell me, Fletch, how many rushing yards Alabama had that game?
Oh, I forgot. Six?
Six. That is correct. Six
Okay, okay.
total rushing yards in that game. They did not look good whatsoever. But a win is a win, and this time of year, that's all that matters at this point. I remember hearing a couple different coaches talking about we're not playing to try and please the committee, we're trying to win the game. And it doesn't matter if you win by 1 point or 50. A win is a win this time of year, but there are some teams that could use a little bit better of a win compared to others. But uh, keep an eye on that game. Fletch, I'm going to take it to you. Any upset alerts this week?
Um, yes. My upset alert this week is going to be. Let me scroll and make sure there's not more than one. No, there is more than one. Okay, I had to make sure. Baylor over Oklahoma State. Be on the lookout for that. Or Oklahoma. I apologize. Big test. Freshman quarterback is going to be starting again. It's in Waco. The line is only 5.5. I'm sorry. The weather's supposed to be good though, so that's going to help both teams. It's a noon game. It's a big noon Fox game. I think Baylor. I'm putting Oklahoma on upset alert. They've been on upset alert all season. They now they have a tough opponent. We put them on upset alert again. My other one is going to be North Carolina over Pitt. I think just them. I mean, I know they're not much of a defense, but them putting up that many points. One thing I learned about sports, man, it puts you in a rhythm. So I think they're going to be in a rhythm going into Pittsburgh. We'll see what happens. I love Kenny Pickett. I really hope Pittsburgh pulls this off, but I am putting them on upset alert as well.
Very good choices there. I will say I want to apologize to the folks. There was one more ranked teams out there. It was number 12 Wake Forest at home against NC State. Obviously, this is their last ranked opponent that they have on their resume. So if they can try and get back into the top 10, maybe a New Year's Six game and win the ACC, this is the game to do it. That is going to be at 7:30 over in Winston Salem. But as for my upset alert, the one that came out right away. It's definitely not the Samford versus Florida. Don't worry about that. Even though Florida did lose by 20 to South Carolina, so maybe I should. Um, but at this point, my upset alert is Michigan going on the road to Beaver Stadium to play Penn
Mm.
State. This is a noon kickoff, so that will help Michigan. Typically, it's much harder to play when Penn State is playing a night game, but Penn State looked great against Ohio State. Now that their quarterback Sean Clifford is fully healthy, that offense looks dynamically different, and that was 2 weeks ago. They played really, really well this past week as well. Penn State, look for them in this game. Again, like we mentioned, Michigan hasn't beaten a ranked opponent besides technically Wisconsin. So Penn State was technically supposed to be ranked until they fell these last couple games against Ohio State, but they are still a very good team. So we'll keep an eye on that one. That should have some implications. But honestly, if I'm sitting on the committee, if Michigan loses, that will help redo your rankings to where Michigan State will be back ahead by one. But that is another topic that we don't have to get back into. So keep an eye out for college football this weekend. Again, I will be doing another rankings reveal on Tuesday. Hopefully this week I'll be actually going 10 for 10 instead of this 8 for 10, but I will take the upgrade nonetheless. Let us go ahead and move into the NFL with our Pick 6 Challenge. Fletch, you have picked the games once again. If we go back to last week, we tied. We only got two apiece. Was not a great week really for anyone. The leaders in that group only got one more pick than we did, so we almost did as well as they. Um, but hopefully we can do a little bit better this week. The first game you chose, the Falcons, going on the road to face the Cowboys. The Cowboys team that got dismantled by the Broncos this past week. A game where they scored
Yes.
16 points, but those 16 points were so late in that game, it might as well have stayed 30 to nothing at that point. They just got dismantled. Atlanta got a nice win, but they will be going on the road here. But it is in a nice little semi-dome there in Jerry World. For this one, I haven't picked my games yet, so I'm going to be picking along with everyone here. For this one, man, it's hard to see Jerry losing two in a row, but I think this is where they lose two in a row. I've got the Falcons winning this game. It might be a little bit of a surprise, but the way Dallas looked, they looked so bad last week. So I'm going to go Falcons. Fletch, who do you got?
Good pick. Good pick. I debated about this a while, and I'm going to go Cowboys. I just think they bounce back. Shout out to my Broncos for laying it on them, but I do think they take a valuable lesson. That's their first big loss of the season, and I think they bounce back next game with the focus of just being better. One thing I did watch that Atlanta game actually last week. They allowed the Saints to actually take the lead with like a minute left, and if it wasn't for Cordero Patterson down the sideline, the Saints win that game. Atlanta's offense looks really good. It's that defense that has a problem. The
Yes.
strength of the Cowboys is that offense. Give me the boys at home in Jerry World.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to pick and it suggests that they're going to lose two straight, especially the way they did. Things are definitely going to change from last week. One little side note, though, and Dak is still dealing with a little bit of a nagging injury, so might have been the reason why. But when you give up that many points, he didn't play defense, so uh, obviously things will change there for the Cowboys, but we'll keep an eye on that one. Moving on to game number two, we have the said Saints going on the road to face the Titans, and honestly, the Titans, Sans, Derrick Henry, they started playing defense. Where did that come from?
They look good on defense too.
My goodness, this was a team that we were expecting that from all season long. Of like, okay, you're going to play good defense, you're going to be able to run the ball. That's exactly a Mike Vrabel stamp of approval, is just being able to do those two things. But they have finally turned it around the defensive side of the football, and like you mentioned with the Saints, very close to winning that game last week. Still trying to figure out exactly who their starting quarterback is going to be at this point. Um, but they still have a phenomenal defense. But I don't think the offense is going to be strong enough to get the win. I've got Tennessee. Fletch, who's your choice?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Great points. Those are kind of the same points that I have as well. I think that defense is better than what they were playing. And I think it just took them a while to get it together. I mean, NFL locker rooms are like cultures, man. And I think just with them losing Henry, I think the defense knew they had to get it together, and they're obviously well coached. So I have the Titans winning this one as well. I do think this is going to be a really good game, though. The Saints are gritty, very, very gritty, and I love it. But I do think the Titans are just a little too much. I think AJ Brown has a day.
Yeah, he could very well be, especially I think Julio came back, but he's still not quite 100% there. But that passing game will still look pretty good, even though Tannehill uh, relying a little bit more on the defense, like we mentioned. In game number three, we have the Cleveland Browns going on the road to the New England Patriots. The Browns losing, basically releasing Odell Beckham Jr., who like we mentioned, signed with the Rams just today. That offense is actually, it's weird. You remove your star player and you look 1,000% better. It's like the offense wasn't really designed to have a star wide receiver in it. It was designed to have a great run game, which they got back to. They look great. And as for the Patriots, Mac Jones continues to have a phenomenal rookie season. Someone that I really wasn't high on coming out of Alabama, just because the hard part of coming out of Alabama is you have so many superstars around you. Once you pull those away, exactly what kind of player are you? But you gotta remember he was highly recruited to Alabama, and when you go to Alabama as a quarterback, you're highly recruited, so you're gonna have some skills. They're continuing to play great defense as well. This one a little bit tougher just because of that Patriots defense, especially in Foxborough. Baker Mayfield can still have some issues unless they can get that run game going. Made life for Joe Burrow last week very difficult on the defensive side of things. I'm going to say in a very close game, I'm going to say the Patriots get this win at home. Fletch, who do you have?
I actually am picking this one very confident, and I'm agreeing with you. I'm going with the Pats, man. I don't know what it is. I just feel like they're a good team. They have a really good defense. Mac Jones is good. They have a lot of nice possession receivers, couple good tight ends, good running game. There's really not a weakness on this team, to be honest with you. They don't have a strength necessarily yet on offense, but they do have an identity. Obviously, probably the most well coached team in football. They're at home. Um, and I mean, the Browns are good. I do think it's a close game as well, but for some reason, I just feel very confident in my pick for the Pats. I just think they get it done and, yeah, move up in those rankings there. I have a feeling we'll see them in the playoffs this year.
Interesting. Do you think they're going to win the division?
No, I think Buffalo will still win the division. I think they'll turn it around. I think they're just in a slump. But I do think they snatch one of the wild card spots. Probably looking at about maybe a 6 or 7. I don't know if they'll go as high as 5, just depending on how high those standings go. But I do think this year with the 17 game schedule, a 9-8 team this year very well may make the playoffs. I think they win 9, possibly 10 games.
Hey, can't disagree with that. And yeah, just like you mentioned, that defense looks very good. Depending on how the things go, they could easily find themselves in the playoff mix. As for our next pick game, we have the Vikings on the road versus the LA Chargers. The Vikings continue to struggle, not really trying to figure things out on the offensive side of the football, even though they have some really good superstars. Um, as for the Chargers, Herbert was a little bit hurt this past week, but they're still a very good team. This one, I think, has one of the highest over unders of this week, I believe. I think the Cowboys might be a little bit higher than that. Regardless, on the road, I'm gonna say the Vikings get the win, and I don't feel comfortable with it, but I'm gonna pick the Vikings. Fletch, who do you got?
I'm honestly, man, the Vikings are not a. They are an underdog still, but I think they're a good football team. They've lost every game this year about one score. I think one. I'm pretty sure, did one go to overtime? I'm not
Mm-hmm.
100% sure. Okay. Um. Yeah, man. Yeah, lost to the Bengals by 3, lost to the Cards by 1, lost to the Browns by 7, lost to the Cowboys by 4, and the Ravens by 3. Uh, Good football team. And I know they're at the Chargers. I'm going with the Chargers on this one, and the reason being is who you mentioned, Justin Herbert. Last week, even a little banged up late in the game, he went 32 for 38 with 2 touchdowns, over 350 yards passing. Keenan Allen had over 100 yards. I just think they pick up where they left off last week and continue to have a good game, or to play well, I should say. I got them winning.
And our pick five, or the fifth game of our pick six challenge, we have the Seattle Seahawks getting Russell Wilson back from the IR. He will be going on the road to face the Green Bay Packers, which could still be without Aaron Rodgers. He's actually eligible to come off the COVID list as early as Saturday. So we should know. I think based on the talks I've heard from different analysts across the board, they are expecting him to play and come off the COVID list on Saturday. That being said, this could be a very high over under game. Both getting their starting quarterbacks back. No more Jordan Love. No more. I don't even know the name of the backup there in
Geno
Seattle.
Smith.
Geno Smith. Yeah, that's fine. Uh, he can go to the bench as well. Um, I've got if Rodgers is back, I've got Green Bay at home. Fletch, who do you got?
I got Seahawks either way.
Wow.
Plain and simple. I love Russell Wilson, and I'm being biased in this pick. I just want to mention this about Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, I believe Clark is the most underrated quarterback in our era. Um, I want to lead by saying this. I think he comes back. I don't. They say he's close to 100% is what I read today. Today is Thursday. He has 3 days to get right. I'm 100% sure he's going to play, and I'm like 95% sure he's going to play extremely well. If you have Seahawks receivers, start them. If you have Seahawks running backs, start them too. If you have Russell Wilson, you're definitely starting him. Hell, you may want to start the tight end. I just feel really good about his first game back. It's because of his personality, man, and that's the only reason why I'm picking the Seahawks. He's a gamer, and I love guys that are like that, and I think he really comes to play, and I think he shows out, and I think he hates the Packers because of the rivalry and the things that they've had going in the past with very, very close games. I think Aaron Rodgers beat them with a Hail Mary before. Yeah, he's coming out with fireworks, I believe, and next week we'll see if I'm right or wrong. But I do have the Seahawks winning this one.
Yeah, yeah. I could easily see it. I kind of went back and forth on this one, but I could easily see this being a little bit more of a shootout, assuming Aaron Rodgers is going to be back for Green Bay. We'll keep an eye on that over the weekend. For our last game, we have the Kansas City Chiefs going on the road against the Las Vegas Raiders, one of the bigger rivalries of NFL. Mahomes continues to throw pick after pick after pick, trying to do a little bit too much, but all the pieces are still there. You still have Tyreek Hill. You still have Travis Kelsey. The run game's going to get a little bit healthier. I think CEH is on course to potentially either be back this week or next. Uh, but defensively, they're still one of the worst in the NFL. As for the Raiders, they looked bad last week. Really bad. They could not get anything going last week. This is This one could literally be first to 30 wins this game. Uh, I'm going to pick Kansas City. I don't feel good about it, but I'm going to pick Kansas City to win this game on the road. Fletch, do you agree?
There's some tough games this week, huh?
Just a little bit.
Hey, fun fact about the Giants: they beat the Chiefs and the Raiders.
Uh,
Or I'm sorry, they lost to the Chiefs
they
by
lost to
three.
the
I
Chiefs by a
apologize.
little close game,
Cl-
but they
cl-
still beat the
Close game. I
Raiders.
should say. Yes, yes. I'm sorry, I meant close game. So, going into this one, do I agree with you in the Chiefs? No, I just don't like them right now. I don't like how they look. They're struggling to win games when they win games. I mean, the Raiders, we've seen them play well. I have not seen the Chiefs play well all season. I know the Raiders are capable of playing well, so I'm going to go with that team.
The two of us, obviously, I've got a 3 game lead as of right now, but a lot of 4 different games. So it could sway very heavily in one way or the other. For both of us, I'm only 4 games out of the lead. You are additional 3 out of it. So we're not too far off, but hopefully this week, just as a group, we can do a little bit better than just 2 or 3 right. But let us go ahead and finish this podcast off with our top 10. Obviously, we do it every single week. We had a lot of upsets this past week, so there's going to be a little bit of changing of the guard throughout the rankings. Um, However, speaking of which, number 10, I continue to have the Saints sitting there. I still think they're a very good team. They just have to figure it out quite on offense, but I like them at number 10. Fletch, who is your number 10?
Yes, sir. I mentioned them earlier in the show. The New England Patriots. I have them as my 10th best team. I just think they look good. They look like a good football team. They look like most, but I got them here at 10.
Yep, not a problem with that. At number 9, I have the Chargers sitting there, climbing back into the rankings. Herbert continues to look good enough to get into my top 10. Fletch, who do you have at number 9?
Number 9, we have the New Orleans Saints. I kept them right where they are. They played Atlanta very well, and Atlanta I think is just playing very well in general. And they had them beat. We mentioned it earlier. They had them beat when they came back and took the lead late in the game. Obviously scored a little too soon, but nonetheless, I do think that's still a good team. I would love to penalize. Just I do think if you lose, you should slide back, but at the same time, I just didn't see enough movement below them to hop over. The
Yeah, and I cannot disagree with that. Now, Fletch, a little bit of a surprise. Who do you have at number 8?
Yeah, my surprise is the Buffalo Bills taking a slide. You don't lose to Jacksonville. I don't care who you are. You don't lose to Jacksonville if you're a quote unquote an elite team. Um, yeah, I slid them back that far because of that, and they looked bad the week before. So yeah, I got them sliding back. They got to get they got to right the ship. I think they will. They're just in a slump, but I got them here at 8.
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to have them fall that far back, but at number 8 for me, I have the Tennessee Titans. Uh, They were not ranked in my last top 10. They vaulted up to number 8 for me. They have looked much, much better. Again, I would still like to see everything put together. We still got to figure out exactly what that backfield is going to look like with either Jeremy McNichols or Adrian Peterson, but they have finally turned a little bit of a corner with the defense. So a lot of room to potentially move up depending on how the offense looks, but I have them at number 8 for now. At my number 7, I have the Ravens sitting there. They look good. Lamar Jackson looks like an MVP candidate this year. He has helped that team come have a nice little comeback in that game. They looked really, really good. I like them at number 7. Who do you have at number 7?
I have the Dallas Cowboys at number 7. Another team took a little bit of a hit as well. I had them fourth last week. Last week I had the Bills 6, and you lose to a team that you shouldn't. And one was 30-0 at one point. I get the Bills only lost by 3, but you shouldn't struggle against a team that bad. Denver's a decent team, I guess you could say, like middle of the pack. You shouldn't be down by that much if you're a Super Bowl contender. I slid them back here to 7. I still think that's a good team. Same with the Bills. Just with the Bills, a little bit of a slump last couple of weeks, and then here at 7 with the Cowboys, bump in the road. Just a big bump in the road. Also dealing with a couple receiver injuries as well, so I don't think they were 100% noted. I know it was late in the game, but the two that scored are like their fourth and fifth receiver on the depth chart. So actually fifth and sixth. I take that back.
Yeah, and they're a little bit of injury, but I think we should have Rashard Bateman back, fully healthy, ready to go. Um, but not Ray Bateman, but the Cowboys getting a few players back, especially I think
Gallup.
yeah Gallup coming back as well as CeeDee Lamb coming off a little bit of an ankle injury. Just that game was just so weird. Uh,
Yeah.
Trying to get that figured out. I was actually looking slightly ahead to your next ranked team. Just tell the people who do you
Mhm.
have at number 6.
Yes, sir. I have those Baltimore Ravens. Just moving up a spot from last week, or two spots. I'm sorry, from last week. Good win, very good win. Lamar Jackson, man. I mean, what more is there to be said? I think you kind of hit it on the head. He's my MVP. Top two, I should say right now. I still don't give a damn. Cooper Cup shit is in the MVP race for me, and I think those are the two. They include all these quarterbacks on TV, and it's like they all are just playing very good on great teams. I'm not impressed. Who I am impressed with is these two. Um, Lamar Jackson just constantly wills his team to win with big wins this year against like the Chiefs late, the Colts late, and here against the Vikings late. Like if they're in a tough game, Clark, give me Lamar Jackson. I think he's going to win it for me. So I got him sitting here at 6, and I think they got a chance to climb here.
Yeah, they definitely have some room to climb, especially as well as they have played. And Lamar, again, like we both mentioned, having an MVP caliber season. As for my number 6 team, I just have it flip flop between you. I have the Cowboys sitting at number 6. They dropped one spot from my last rankings. I know the loss was bad, but they're still a good team. Offensively, they're going to get it back into works. Maybe Dak was 100%. Defensively, I don't know if they just wasn't ready for that game. I think I'd have to give all the credit in the world to the Broncos for just being ready to play, and they came out and they dominated. But let's not talk about them. Let's talk about at number 5, the new number 5, dropping all the way from number 2, the Buffalo Bills. Like we mentioned, losing to the Jaguars in stunning fashion, but giving us one of the best statistics out there when Josh Allen intercepts Josh Allen, along with a fumble recovery from Josh Allen by Josh Allen. It is absolutely insane. Always love those wonderful stat nuggets, but the Bills are still a very good team. You're going to have some bad weeks. Good teams are going to lose. Uh, there's no really big loss injury wise. They just got to really figure some things out. But I like them at number 5. Fletch, who's your number 5?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Into the top 5 now. We got the Tampa Bay Bucks. I literally slid them up a spot because I had them behind the Bills last week. They didn't play. Or I'm sorry, did they play?
Last
I may
week,
be mistaken.
no, they did
Or
not.
no, they were off, right?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I had to make sure I wasn't mistaken. Yes. So, yeah, just slid up a spot. Obviously, we know who they are. We know what they can do. We know what they're capable of. No reason to push them up any further. No reason to really to slide them back. I kind of penalized the Bills a little bit more than you did, partially just because also too looking at the last 3 weeks from the Bills. Lost against Tennessee. Struggled a little bit against Dolphins and then scored late to go up 26-11, and then you only scored 6 points on a probably one of the worst teams in the league and lose 9-6. So it's just a combination of a few things. But yeah, I have the Bucks sliding up due to that here at 5.
Very interesting. It will definitely surprise you when you see the rest of my top 5. But
I
before we
figured
get
this week would.
before we get to that, well, who's your number 4?
Number 4. I have the Green Bay. Excuse me, I skipped a team. I have the LA Rams here at 4. Another team that took a tough loss. They were my number one team from last week. Still think highly of them. That's 2 losses for them on the season. Currently, they are the fourth team winning percentage wise in the league, and they're fourth on my list. Kind of plain and simple for me there with them. Next, am I? You want me to knock out my 5, Clark?
Go ahead. Yeah.
All right, we'll kick it to you. Here at number 3, kind of already mentioned them here, is the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers last week without Jordan Love took a loss. I do have them getting upset this week. We'll obviously change the rankings accordingly if we need be so. But I do have the Packers here. I still think they're a really good team. Slid them down one spot from last week due to the loss they took, and I think they're still gonna be the division crown champs here, and probably finish top 2 or 3 in the divisions or the conference. So we'll wait to see for that. Um, Top 2 here. I'm not rattle them off here. I got Arizona number 1, and I got Tennessee Titans actually number 2.
Wow.
I understand you having them where you have them, especially with no Derrick Henry, but they are 7-2. They've won 5 straight. They beat the Rams in, you know, I don't even know, a convincing fashion. They look very good on defense. They still look good on offense. I do think the duo between McNichols and Peterson will be not so much the same as Derrick Henry. I won't go that far, obviously, but I do think they'll play very well with those two at running back. And then in the playoffs, they're saying Derrick Henry very well may be ready. If they get that first round bye, which they currently hold right now, that is going to be huge, along with being at home through the whole playoff. So just be on the lookout for these Titans moving forward. I think very highly of them. If I'm not mistaken, Clark, they've made the playoffs the last 3 years and been to the title game. I know once, if in the division round twice.
Sounds accurate.
Okay, they're formidable, and I think they're really good here. And then I got the Cardinals, with the best record in the league. The only loss is to the Packers, but I do have them sitting there at number 1. They basically went and won the game last week with essentially all second string guys. Um, that was very very convincing for me to put them number 1. So that's my 5 or my 10, I should say, Clark. I'll go ahead and kick it to you, man. Give the folks your 5.
So this is going to be very interesting that I put them this way, but this is my list, not yours. Um, at number 5, I think we already said the number 5 for me. Yeah, it was the Bills. I had them sitting at number 5. Um, I still think they're a very good team. At number 4 and 3, I flipped yours. So at 4, I have the Packers, and I have at number 3 the Rams. Still think they're very good teams. Obviously, they're going to have bad weeks, just like the Bills did. It happens. Obviously, the Packers without Aaron Rodgers, so that's you're comparing like Packers A to Packers B. And we saw Packers B with Jordan Love at the helm. It's just not going to work out. They need Aaron Rodgers back in order to really have any type of hope for a playoff push or even a Super Bowl push. And as for the Rams, yeah, they got handled by the Titans, and I understand having the Titans up that far, but whole bodies work. The Rams are going to be good. I don't know if the OBJ addition is going to really eh, put gas on an already huge fire that's already there. Uh, but we'll see. Maybe it does. Maybe it allows them to be Buck-esque, where you have so many options to where Robert Woods is constantly 1v1, and Cooper Kupp continues to. Well, at this point, he's always 1v1. He's always open for some reason, regardless of what happens. The teams just can't figure it out. Like, I don't know if his picture's not, aggressive enough. I don't know. Uh, but I have them at number 3. At number 2 is where I have the Cardinals sitting. Just like you
Ah.
mentioned with the Cardinals, they looked very good against my Niners, unfortunately, who faced Colt McCoy, but it didn't matter because James Conner ran all over them. 173 total yards and 3 total touchdowns on the day. They looked really good, but again, it was against my Niners, so little bit of a grain of salt there. They have not played very well at all, but At number one, I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number one. And yes, they had a bye. Yes, they didn't play anybody. Yes, they didn't get a win or get a loss. But we know how good this team is. Every single week when it comes to fantasy football, if you're listening to like ESPN or fantasy footballers, when they're talking about running backs facing the Buccaneers, what do they tell you? Don't
Sit
play
them.
them. Yes, you can't run on the Buccaneers. We know how potent that defensive line is. You can pass on them, but it doesn't matter because you're going to have to make up so many points because that offense is very, very good. I did hear that Godwin is dealing with a little bit of injury that could sit him this week, but I know Gronk's still sitting this week. They actually signed another tight end, so they might just have Mike Evans this week, but I don't think it matters. You've got Tom Brady. You've got a very good running game with Leonard Fournette, and even bringing in Ronald Jones from time to time looks very, very good. I think right now they are the number one total package team. I know I've had the Cardinals in front of them before. I know I've had even the Bills and Packers, but uh, we'll see what happens. But for right now, I think the Buccaneers are number one as of right now. But as we know with the NFL, any given week can give us a different result. Uh, well, Fletch, we made it through yet another podcast.
Indeed, indeed, we did. One thing I do want to mention about those Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for those folks at home that love sports like me and my brother Clark here do, check out that Man in the Arena that kicks off on the 16th on ESPN or ESPN Plus. I'm excited, man. I love the last ESPN doc, The Last Dance with Jordan and the Bulls. I think this will be something like that. This is what I believe is a 10-part series, if I'm reading this right as well. And I'm excited. I'm excited. I used to hate Tom Brady, but then he moved on to the Bucks, and I realized I actually don't hate Brady. I hate the Pats. So, so I'm going to enjoy this. Clark, what do you think about the doc coming out?
All those docs are very, very interesting. I always like watching each and every one of them. Ever since they started the ESPN 30 for 30 or E60, uh, every single one of them has been
Yes.
absolutely phenomenal to watch. So I'm sure this one will just be up there with all the rest of them. Sadly enough, I hate to admit it, but I haven't had the time to do it. But I haven't watched the Last Dance documentary yet.
Oh
Um,
no.
I need to go watch it because grew
You
up
sh-
being a Jordan fan, grew up being a Bulls fan. So it is on my must list, but I've got so many things going on right now that time is not on my side. But I'm sure
Understandable.
I will find time for it absolutely. But just like we mentioned, we'll keep an eye on the sports this past weekend, and we will talk to everybody this coming Thursday. For Fletch, my name is Clark Heron, aka the Hairy Hobo, and we're out.
Peace.